All right, the last of the 4.5 homework assignments. This one deals with hypothesis testing. There's not a whole lot of questions here. And in one of them, you don't even do much of the hypothesis testing process. You just kind of set it up. So, question one here, they don't want you to go through and do the entire four-step process for hypothesis testing that I've taught you. They just want you to be able to read the problem and state the null and alternative hypotheses. It's a little bit annoying how these are formatted. I would have liked it to say H naught and then down on the next row, maybe H1 or HA. But hopefully you can make sense of the formatting and figure out which of these are the null and alternative hypotheses. And then they don't actually want you to calculate a test statistic or a critical value or any of that stuff. They're telling you that somebody else already did that and they decided to reject the null hypothesis. So if they did the classical method, they found that the test statistic was in the rejection region. If they did the p-value method, they found the p-value was less than alpha. One reason or another, we don't know which method they used. They decided to reject the null hypothesis. And you're supposed to decide what conclusion corresponds with rejecting the null hypothesis. So we're just stating the null and alternative, and then we're stating the conclusion. So kind of two of the four steps. Then these remaining three problems are all kind of the same. These are a little bit better, I guess. They state the null and alternative hypotheses for you, which is sort of annoying. I wish that you had to do that yourself. But maybe you can read the problem and make sure that this all kind of makes sense to you, this language, the symbols that they're using. And then they give you the sample size and the number of successes, and they ask you for a test statistic and a p-value. So it doesn't explicitly say it, but based on what it's asking for, you know they're using the p-value method as opposed to the classical method. And then based on your p-value, you can decide if you reject the null and what that means for your conclusion. And I think the formatting of these guys, the language is pretty similar to what you've done on previous problems, which ties in pretty well with how we do this in the videos. So hopefully this one will go okay for you. What you'll see on 3 and 4 is they're very similar to this one. Maybe instead of all being, maybe they'll change from a left-tailed test like a right-tailed or a two-tailed. I don't remember if they ever give you p hat instead of x. I do know that it's the p-value method for all three of these because I couldn't find any classical method ones. But hopefully you could do these with the classical method. You could practice that on your own if you want. So this one, you read through the problem. They give you a little bit of extraneous information, but maybe you can pull out the relevant stuff, find the test statistic, the p-value, and then make your conclusion. And then, I guess here's something that's different on this one. On 2, they explicitly tell you the null and alternative hypotheses, but they don't on this problem. Maybe I should read through it to make sure that we can find it. You are conducting a study to see if the proportion of stocks that went up is significantly less than. I think this less than will be really important to you. In fact, I think you can ignore most of this stuff up here. Maybe all you need to know is this stuff about the sample on this line. And then this right here kind of talks about what you're studying. So I'm not positive, but I believe you can ignore this entire first paragraph. Then question 4 goes back to stating the null and alternative hypotheses, and then test statistic and p-value. So again, not the classical method, and then make your conclusion. And I would like you to be able to do the p-value method and the classical method. So it might be worth your time to redo either 2, 3, or 4, one of these guys, and see if you can do it the classical way. Like do it, you can't check your answer this way, but you should come to the same conclusion using the classical method as you do with the p-value method. So that's optional, but it might be good practice for you. If you don't do that, just spend a little bit of extra time on the written problem, where I believe I ask you to do the p-value and the classical method.